Welcome back to the Now Morning Show. I'm Kimberly D'Souza. It's now 29 minutes after the hour of 7 o'clock. Now, the Police Service Social and Welfare Association will hold its elections at the end of June. And with me to talk about this is the president of the association, the incumbent president of the association, Mr. Gideon Dixon. Mr. Dixon, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us on Now.
Kimberly, good morning. Thank you for joining. Thank you for having me, and thank you for your viewers.
How are you this morning, Mr. Dixon?
All things being equal, I'm not complaining. It has been a hectic last 2 weeks,
right,
and we're in the middle of the campaign, so I'm holding out.
Yes, I can hear it in your voice that you've been,
And the first thing, I don't have the best morning voice in the world, but the voice is trying to hold out as long as it can.
Right, okay.
Right?
So,
but thanks for having us.
Of course. I'll try not to keep you too long, but let's jump right in. The elections are supposed to be in June. What day in June, and how often should elections be called for the association?
Right, the association general elections for executive officers are in fact on June 27th, Monday, June 27th. It is held every 3 years. Last 3 years ago, it was held on the 26th of June. In this election, we will have the posts of President, Vice President, Secretary, Assistant Secretary, Treasurer, 2 trustees, and a First Division officer being appointed into office.
Now, as the incumbent, I'm guessing that you're going to be running again for the post, you and your team?
Yes, my team and I will be running again. We have 4 returning officers from the last regime. 2 of the persons who were with us have now, one have proceeded on pre-retirement and one will be proceeding on pre-retirement later this year, so they will not be there. The current secretary has formed his own team, and one of the person who got onto the slate of the executive came from another team, so he has gone back to that team.
So you're going to be having some new members within your camp?
Well, one might say new, but the reality is those persons who have been working alongside the association to achieve all its goals over the last 3 years have been ascended into office, so they are now holding the other positions that the other executives who would not be going will be holding. So it's like succession planning.
Now, you mentioned the objectives. What are some of the things that your team accomplished within the past 3 years?
Firstly, I think that my team needs to get some order of Trinidad and Tobago medal, because we did a manifesto in 2019, May, June 2019, and when we did the manifesto, it came on the backdrop of a survey we did with the members. When we did this survey, we asked the members outside of salary negotiations and outside of promotion, what 2 issues they would want to see the association address. The members listed several. Out of those several, we put 20 items on as our manifesto delivery to the membership. We had 3 years to do it. I am pleased to report to the nation and to my colleagues that we achieved 18 out of the 20. Most times you hear of a manifesto, persons don't achieve not even 50% of what they put there. So it's a promise given to persons and you don't deliver. So my team will have achieved 18 out of the 20, and some of the achievements inclusive of the manifesto captured in a poster we have out right now. Additionally, we also have 55 other achievements we have achieved along the way. The list is about 73 or 75 things. It's too much to list. I can even call it out. I have them.
Well, I was going to ask you, out of the 20, you mentioned that you were able to achieve 18. Can you give at least 3 examples of what, some of that would have been?
Right. So, out of the 18, first thing first, we would have achieved something in terms of housing. Police officers, by and large, one of the main things which came out of the survey, excuse 1 second. One thing which came out of the survey is the fact that they wanted homes. Now, we are part of a protective services body with HDC. And right now I want to use the opportunity to call on HDC to resume that body in terms of the protective services, where we're supposed to be allocated 10% of homes in all communities delivered by the government. That in itself, that out of that 10%, it is divided between Defence Force, prisons, fire and police. So we have approximately, if you get 100 homes by HDC, 10 homes for the protective services, so you have 2.5 homes to get out of 10. That is insufficient. So we created, through partnership, something called with Hardware and Beyond, opportunity for officers to be able to get materials at discounted rates. And we partner with Hardware and Beyond, materials up to the tune of $250,000. So an officer who has a parcel of land can build from foundation to finish. That was the first initiative. Additionally, we have partnered with FCL Limited to do something called a rent-to-own initiative, which we have presently 16 officers in a queue. 16 officers in a queue that should be receiving their homes within the next 2 months. We feel that those are landmark achievements at this juncture within 3 years under the extraordinary conditions we have faced as it relates to COVID and as it relates to the shock the whole global economy would have had. So that is just 2 initiatives.
Yeah. Now, Mr. Dixon, I don't want to keep you too long, so I'm going to keep moving, right? No. Yeah. I hear the initiatives that you have achieved, but I know that you're also talking about those 2 that weren't achieved. And so moving into the new term, if you are successful, what are some of the things that you want to achieve for the next 3 years?
All right. So some of the things we'd like to achieve, firstly, we'd want our rule book to be dealt with, where we would be able to have a municipal and a special reserve officer on the board, because it speaks to the volume of officers we have under those umbrella who have now become members of the association. We want them to have a voice in terms of the decision making. We also want to close our salary negotiations within the first 100 days. In terms of the medium term, we are expected to go into partnership to do a outdoor range for the officers, because presently police don't have a range of our own. And in terms of long term, we would want to put in place something called a complex with a corporate model style in Central Trinidad, a parcel of land we have there. We want to have there a conference room. We want to have kiosks for our small business entrepreneurs. We want to also be able to have a spa. We want to have an indoor shooting range and a grocery similar to that of supermarket to cater for all the members of the association.
Right. Now, Mr. Dixon, you mentioned the wages that you want to discuss, and I believe that the police, social services, welfare, they're supposed to be meeting with the CPO, I believe, on June 10th to discuss that 2%. I mean, what sort of negotiations are you going in there with?
Right. Excellent question. The CPO offer to the police, we believe, we understand that we are in the bag with everyone else in terms of negotiation, but if one is true to themselves, the police cannot and ought not to be in that bag. So we have some work to do in terms of the linking. That 2% offer to police, we outrightly reject it. We will be going to the CPO on Friday, all things being equal, and engage in the negotiation process. The offer was only made on May 19th. We have responded. We have met our membership at all the stages, and outrightly they have rejected. We believe that based on what the police had to face, particularly between December 2019 to present, and having lost 37 officers, we have sufficient leverage. We have over 843 officers who have retired between 2014 to 2018, and over 1,300 have retired between that period and 2021. The offer of 2% cannot satisfy our retirees who are living on meager pensionable benefits from 2013.
So if not the 2%, is there an offer that you're going to suggest when you meet him on Friday?
Well, the first thing we would like to know is what is the outer limits. We want to bargain in good faith. We are reasonable and responsible association, and we want to do that. And we want the maximum for membership.
The maximum in terms of, are we saying 6? Are we saying 8?
Well, you're trying to, I don't want to be boxed in.
Right,
I don't want to be boxed in, but I would want that consideration, favorable consideration, be given to our membership, because again, there is no comparators to the police in Trinidad and Tobago, be it in the region or globally. No one could do what we have to do. It is written in the Constitution, it is written in the Police Service Act. The police And then you have seen what we have done in the midst of a pandemic. Every time the regulation changed, I'm getting passionate now, Kimberly. Every time that regulation changed, the police had to respond. And now when you look, we have lost 37 officers. Ask yourself whether any other industry would have lost any amount of personnel as the police would have lost. And we have not stopped working. Our leave have been restricted since December 2019. We are now getting back to a level of normalcy.
But Mr. Dixon, the same could be said for the healthcare workers, who of course were the frontline workers throughout the pandemic as well.
I love that. You know why I love that? I am not taking anything away from the healthcare workers, but I'll tell you this. They had all the tools and equipment to protect them. When the pandemic started, we had nothing. Nothing. We didn't expect it, but we had nothing. And we had to find crafty ways to try to protect our own and still deliver to the public. We didn't close the station door. They came through the door still. So we don't know who was coming in. We had to treat them and we had to go out and meet them. The police work is not one way. We were considered, all we get so far since this is a clap. It's a clap. And if you really and truly throw your mind as to how we operated over that period, SOE, our families not seeing us, we're losing colleagues, our mental stress and trauma keep rising on a continuum, and we didn't shy away.
Now, Mr. Dixon, we only have a few minutes, but I know one of the arguments that's being made currently is that the country already has a high wage bill, and so that's one of the reasons why the 2% was offered 1% per term for 2 terms. I mean, how do you respond to this?
Well, we note that the government skillfully placed on paper 2 periods. A 5-year period, consistent with if you go before a special tribunal or industrial court, and a 3-year period, consistent with the bargaining period. We are saying that we were part of the consultation where the projection was given for the country for the 10-year period and a projection up to 2024. The reality of the situation is that the offer of 0.0001 means for us 843 officers presently getting nothing. Those others who stood on the shoulders of those officers getting 1%. Now, there are other ways the government can go about trying to satisfy the public's cry for relief in terms of we have bonds. We would have done it before in the past. The negotiation will bring out, at the end of the day, the best for the workers. And I believe once we go about it in good faith, these things will be achieved. But to wholeheartedly put it out there that the wage bill is too high, no one is saying that you have to increase that wage bill exorbitantly, but you have to give consideration for the work, because the government projects didn't stop between 2014 to now. And the government, when we have to make a projection to the international media, we speak of how well we are doing and how well we have done. And the government don't spare costs in terms of paying their own gratuity and pension. So we now, as the workers who have continued to ensure a level of safety and security is given to Trinidad and Tobago, we ought not to just be put to the side and say, well, take that.
Mr. Dixon, I know you have more to say, but we're unfortunately out of time. I look forward to the updates that you have with the CPO on Friday, and we're going to hope to have you back in, and hopefully you get some rest in between that time. So when you come back with us, we can have a more spirited conversation.
Kimberly, thanks for having me. I really apologize for my...
No, don't apologize at all.
Very passionate.
No, of course. And we totally understand. Thanks so much, Mr. Dixon.
Thank you very much.
And that was Mr. Gideon Dixon, who is the incumbent president of the Police Service Social and Welfare Association, just sharing his thoughts on the 2% and, of course, the elections that's coming up at the end of June. But we haven't done yet. Stay with us, because up next we have a musical performance from Cal P. Stay with us.